Get higher, baby. Get higher, baby. Get higher, girl. Hey.
Okay.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Pageless Library. I'm Ryan Knight, and I'm joined by my brother Bo Knight, and we're here to talk about the audiobook Solaris.
Personally, I don't know how Ryan feels about this book now yet, everybody. We're all going to learn together. But when I first heard this book, I really, really, really enjoyed it. Obviously, the first person I'm going to tell is my brother, and he did not like it. He didn't
I
like it
did
very
not.
much at all.
No, I didn't.
So, I mean, I think one of the first things I want to say about this book is that I think it's like a must listen to for everyone. I don't know how Ryan feels, but I think that I'm gonna get that out of the way right away.
That's an early big thumbs up from Bo, obviously. I am gonna go ahead and cover just some of our general stuff here. So the book Solaris that we're going to be talking about, it was actually originally written, let's see, in like 1961, and
It's very old.
it originated in Poland, so it has actually been translated over to English, and it was published in English in 1970. So it's a fairly older book.
Dang, it took 10 years to get it published. I didn't even notice that.
To get
In
it
English?
published in English, yeah.
Dang, dude. Do you think people were waiting like, oh man, I can't wait for the Solaris to be on English?
I don't know. Maybe because like a couple other things that I'm looking at are showing that it was published in several different languages, which is interesting because we were kind of talking about that doesn't happen all that often, is for books to get translated into multiple languages. So
Well, I think we're just kind of spoiled as Americans that like most good media is in English.
Oh, yeah, and that could very well be true.
Because I mean, I don't know, one of my roommates is French, and I was talking to him about the other day. And like a lot of the time, the French are going to watch American movies and French movies, but we don't get the French movies. They don't even come here.
So that brings up an interesting point too, is like a lot of Japanese culture stuff. When you like, we'll take Dark Souls for example. Dark Souls, the wording in it, like the voice acting was only dubbed in English.
I know, isn't that
and
weird?
it's a Japanese game, but the voice acting was only dubbed in English, so they had to read subtitles for a game published and made in their own country.
All
Like
soft games are like that.
that is interesting.
Except for Sekiro that just came out. Sekiro is in Japanese, but that's because it's like set in Japan.
Well, oh, okay, yeah, that makes sense.
So yeah, back to Solaris.
Back to, anyways, this the audiobook itself was actually published in, looks like 2011.
Yeah, it's actually kind of recent.
Right, yeah. The audiobook is actually relatively new. I mean, realistically, so
And
that's
I think
interesting.
the overall audio quality is really, really good. There's no like weird pop-ins, or you can't hear the guy like gulping or freaking swishing around in his freaking windbreaker that's covered in leaves. He's just swishing around all the time. You don't hear any of that.
For anybody who doesn't understand that comment, go back and listen to our junk episode. You'll know exactly what we're talking about.
I mean, I didn't notice any. Did you, Ryan?
No, I thought the audio quality was pretty on point for this one, which is, to be honest, kind of what I've come to expect, I guess. Maybe that's a little bit, maybe that's a little bit shitty on my part, but it makes titles more like junk stand out that much more for being bad, I guess. Yeah, that's true too. I mean, it is the new title essentially, and it was still very poorly done.
Can we talk about my actually favorite part of this book, which is the narrator and just how good of a job he does?
Yeah,
I don't know if you like him actually. I don't even know yet. Maybe you think he's garbage.
So his name is Alessandro Giuliani. And I thought he did a great job too. Actually, I did think he did a really good job. This is my second time listening to the book, and
Like fourth.
I solely listened to it for a second time to do this episode. Otherwise, I had no intention of listening to it again. But I did think that this Alessandro he does a very good job for this book, actually.
What I think that he does an amazing job of is like letting you know like who's talking and what they're like he does a really good job of it being like, oh, this is out loud, this is in his head, without even really just the way he enunciates. He does an amazing job, and you can't get any of the two characters confused with their voices at any point.
Right, and actually, yes, I agree with that. He did a very good job. And when we get into talking about the characters a little bit more, as we get into this, I'll talk a little bit more about that. But I do think he does an excellent job for sure. I don't think that he does this a lot of credit, in my opinion. Again, this is a book for sure that people who read it themselves would have a much different experience with. But
I don't know.
This is a good one to listen to, though, for sure.
Yeah, it's definitely I mean, obviously, I love it, but it is a good book. I mean, it's only about how long is it? 8 hours?
It's 7 hours and 42 minutes, so yeah, about 8 hours. It's actually pretty short.
Pretty short. And right now, actually, on Audible, it's free with your Audible trial if you want to get it. But I mean, otherwise, I think if you're looking about like $10 if you wanted to just buy it outright.
It's 20. It's actually 20. Yeah, if you don't have a Prime membership or whatever. So
yeah. So I mean, I feel like our whole podcast is just an ad for Amazon. I mean, for Audible. Because that's where we listen to audiobooks. And I mean, if you're for real about audiobooks, you're gonna have Audible. You've had it for years already.
Right. Yeah, you've pretty much had it since it was available to get on like your iPod Touch or whatever you were using, because
it's super convenient.
Yeah, and I agree. It's about the only way to do it nowadays, anyways. So the genre of this book, we were kind of going back and forth on this a little bit. This is like a sci-fi mystery almost. Is that kind of what we're calling it?
Yeah, but I mean, even that doesn't really describe it. It is one of a kind.
Yeah, I would agree with that actually, because it is kind of hard. I mean, obviously it is sci-fi, but there is undertones of something else, and that's kind of hard to pinpoint, like what that other thing is that's going on in it.
Yeah, and I think to this book, even I'm going to admit this is not really easy listening. Like, you really have to kind of be paying attention to really follow exactly what's going on, because there are a lot of things that get mentioned, but then something like it's like happening in the background later, and he's not going to draw attention to it at all,
right?
Because this book it's Polish, and I mean, I know for like at least Russian films, like I've seen the movie of this, the Solaris movie that is in Russian, and it's very slow buildy. Like their media is a little bit different than ours. It's not as much in your face. It's like really slow, just characters talking for a long time, and things. Yeah, like I'll wait till later actually to talk about that. But I don't think this is very easy listening, and I'm sure you kind of agree.
So I think that was my biggest problem with it the first time I listened to it, because not only is it not super easily listening, it's also, like you said, it's very easy to miss kind of a key point of information and very quickly find yourself like, wait a minute, what's happening? Like, what's going on? And in this book, unlike some other books we've talked about in the past, like Monster Hunter, where Monster Hunter, even if you miss a part and you're like, wait, what's going on? A few seconds later, you'd be like, oh, okay, never mind, I get it. This book is not like that. Like, if you miss key information to the point where you're going, wait, what's happening? You're pretty much lost. You're not really going to catch back up. So if you do listen to this and you find yourself doing that, like I know, like I've mentioned before, I listen to these pretty much solely while I'm driving, and when I drive, I tend to daydream. Even if the book is really interesting, I find myself, my thoughts wander to where I miss information. Um, so if you catch yourself, and I'm not saying the book's not engaging in that way, I'm just saying if you do catch yourself missing a part, I highly would just say skip back 30 seconds, a minute, whatever you think you missed, and listen to it again, because if you get off track, you're not going to be able to stay caught up with the story.
And I think to really do this book justice, you need to listen to it at least twice.
I actually would agree with that.
And-
I will say I agree with that statement.
Yeah.
And like Bo said in the beginning, he doesn't fully know my reaction to the second time I listen to it. So we're gonna get into that after we get through our spoiler wall.
He's been
we'll
really
get into
coy
that.
about it so far.
Yeah,
picking your words super carefully, and honestly impressed.
I've been wanting to save it for the podcast just because I figured it would kind of make an interesting conversation at the very least.
I mean, just so everybody knows, I feel like we need to talk about, like, me and my brother, we're like best friends. We talk all the time. And so,
Right.
like, it's kind of weird for me not to know his opinion about something. Because, I mean, obviously, we're both really opinionated guys. And we just like to tell people our opinions sometimes.
Yeah, and we figured, most of these conversations that we're having about all this stuff anyways, we figure why not record it? That's kind of how this podcast came about anyways. So it's made it more interesting, though, when we talk in person, like about this book. I said, I finished it, and he was kind of like, well, what'd you think this time? And I was like, no, we're going to save it till the podcast. So it's made it more interesting for us even.
So, and I want to talk a little bit about the translation, because I mean, I've never read the original. So I mean, I'm sure if somebody gets mad at me about that, that's fine. And maybe this is exactly how it's supposed to sound. But there are a few parts where there's like words that really don't quite mean what they're supposed to mean in the situation. You know what I mean?
Uh-huh.
There are a couple that you're like, that was weird. Like, that's not what you would say. Especially, yeah, and so like that you just have to kind of be ready for that. And especially the first time I listened to it, like as soon as that happened, I was like, I wasn't listening for 10 minutes because it's like, why would he say that? I'm so
Right.
confused.
Yeah, and I understand what you're saying too. Yeah, because there are a few things, and I do think that's exactly what it is probably like a translation, not necessarily even an error, just you can only change things up so much when you translate something to keep it with its core, still keep the core meaning of it. So I definitely know what you mean too.
Yeah. So, I mean, I don't know if you're gonna recommend it or not, but I think this book is definitely worth at least like 16 hours of your time, because if you liked it the first time, you're gonna have to listen to it again to really understand just exactly what's happening. And that's really where my appreciation for this book grew more and more, was each time that I listened to it. Like I said, this is like my fourth time, and I blew through it in like a day because I forgot that I love it so much.
Yeah, so for my recommendation, what I will say is the second time I listened to it, I actually listened to it at like 1.2 speed on my Audible player, and it made it a little bit better for me, honestly. With the narrator still being amazing, I just thought it helped a little bit having some of the pacing sped up a little bit. And I don't know what it was. It shortened it a little bit for me, but definitely made it better the second time around. And I'm going to go ahead and recommend this book as well. I do think this is definitely worth a listen. And just anybody who does go on from here to listen to it, just know that, like I said, if you get off track, make sure to stay on track. Don't all of a sudden get off track and listen for 10 more minutes and be like, this book is stupid. I have no idea what's going on. This is one you need to pay attention. Like, probably not one you can be doing your homework during, or whatever people are doing when they listen to audiobooks. Like I said, I mostly drive while I'm listening to them, or like when I mow the lawn or whatever, do housework. But this is one you're going to need. It's going to need most of your attention for sure. But I definitely recommend it.
And before we go on to the spoilers, I say if you're like even remotely interested in this book, do not listen to any more of this podcast. Like, you should not. You should go into this book with no idea what's going to happen at all.
Yeah, actually, yeah, that is a good point, because I mean, we're trying to get a little bit more on a like an outline for our episodes. So we're gonna try to make sure we don't give away too much of the book before. Like, if people want to go listen to it with our recommendation, then by all means we say go listen to it and then come back here and listen to the rest of the episode.
Yeah, I mean, you got to come back to the rest of the podcast, right? That led you to the book you fell in love with.
I mean, I would hope so. That's but so yeah, this right here will be our kind of our spoiler wall, and we'll just let everybody know that we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna discuss the book. We'll talk about it a lot more in detail, and so we're gonna spoil a lot of it. So definitely, if you want to listen to the book, go listen to the book now, and then come back after you've listened to it and hear what we have to say.
And you better come back.
Yes, please come back. I mean, just do us that favor. And then after you finish this one, go listen to our other episodes too. Shameless plug there.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, so with that, with the spoilers off, now we'll get into talking about Solaris. So I'm gonna kind of let Bo takes the reins on this one, because I think.
Oh, okay.
I mean, I listened to it very recently, but I mostly want to hear from your.
Oh,
point of
okay.
view.
So Solaris is, I guess, to start it off, Solaris is itself a planet in this world, like in the super far future, where pretty much all of space has been explored, and they haven't found any life except for on Solaris, which is a special planet because it has 2 suns. And like, especially like right away in the beginning of this book, they start talking like science terms all the time.
Oh yeah, really quick too. And to be honest, that's one of the first things that threw me off the first time I listened to it, is right away. I am not gonna lie to you. Right away, this first initial sequence that we hear, it's literally as simple as a dude getting in a launch pod,
but
and
I
getting
love
launched through space.
how lovingly like he paints the picture for you.
So the first time I listened though, that's all it is. It's a dude getting in a space shuttle,
Right.
getting like launched through space,
And they use weird words for things.
And they lost me through that very first little sequence. I'm not gonna lie, they lost me.
Okay, I want to talk a little bit about. So I'm going to say the main character is Kelvin. So Kelvin, that's who in the beginning. That's who's telling the story. That's the only person you get to see from perspective is Kelvin.
Yeah, it's through his eyes.
And I think they do that beautifully. But we'll talk about that a little bit later, because the stuff that I love about this book is like the things about the ocean and those kinds of things. So yeah, this ocean that is between these 2 suns, it should be impossible for it to live there, right? And they automatically assume that it's not. There's no way it's a life form, because it's just an ocean. Like, ocean can't be a life form. But then, like, as they start studying it more, it starts like acting weird, and it like makes these huge structures for no apparent reason. And and it can control the gravity of the planet so that it stays perfectly in between these 2 suns. And it should he explains it for like 30 minutes, I feel like, that it should be impossible for a world with 2 suns like within this close to it for life to exist on it.
Yeah, because they talk about how with 2 suns, inevitably your orbit would be like such an elliptical to where you'd either get too close to one and it would be way too hot to sustain life, or it would get too far away from both and also be too cold to sustain life. So there's no way it should actually be able to have life on this planet.
But the way the book tells you about that is by Kelvin reading a textbook.
Yes.
And I love that.
So I did like that too the second time around, is that a lot of the information we get like on what is happening is we're getting a lot of it through Kelvin's eyes. Like I said, Kelvin is the one who gets in the shuttle. He's launched to the space station, and the space station is orbiting Solaris.
But it's like on the surface, right? Like, that's the way I picture it.
Well, it's close. It's in orbit around the planet. It is close, and they can like maneuver it, as far as I understand, too.
Yeah, it's like floating, because Solaris has no no ground. It's all water. I mean, yeah, it's all ocean.
It's basically all ocean. Yeah, exactly. There is land under the ocean, but the
Yeah.
entire planet is covered in this single organism, basically, which is they call the ocean. And the whole point of the space station that Kelvin goes to is it's basically like the International Space Station, where it's just orbiting, but these few people, it's only like 3 people at a time, are
Yeah, but
literally
you don't
just
know
up
that at the
there.
beginning.
No, you don't.
And I
But
get the
it's-
feeling that there used to be way more people there.
Yeah, and we'll get into that in a little bit because I wanted to talk on that too. Back to what I was saying originally is like he touched on. So we're seeing stuff through Kelvin's eyes, and then to gain kind of deeper knowledge about like the overarching story is, like Bo said, is Kelvin basically going through books in this library that's on the space station, and then he reads about like past expeditions and past experiments they've done, and he basically reads it to us, and that is surprisingly effective way to pass this information, I found.
Well, for me, like, I don't like in a show when like the dialogue is like, oh, did you know that in 1974 the ocean killed 3 people on accident and it was an accident, and then he like talks about it for forever, like that this doesn't do that, but it gives you so much information and it feels so natural because Kelvin's learning as you are.
Yeah, and that's exactly it, because Kelvin's like the newest person sent to this space station.
Well, he is Gabarian's assistant, right? And Gabarian is one of the guys that's been on there for a really long time.
Right, and when he gets there, though, that's who he's looking for when he gets there is Gavarian, but Gavarian is dead when he gets there.
Dang, spoilers.
Right?
I mean, it doesn't matter.
All spoilers are off.
Yeah,
and you learn that right off. You learn it right off the bat, though. That's
but
the first
nobody
thing
actually
that What's-His-Face
says
tells him.
nobody says actually in the whole book at any point that he's dead.
That is true. Actually,
because Snout goes, you know, and then he goes, he had an accident, and they never say Gabarian is dead at any point.
I think you're right. Yeah.
And I mean, there's so much weird stuff going on in this book.
Well, yeah, and that was why the first time I listened is I had a very hard time because I started falling behind right off the bat.
Well, and
like
especially,
I said, I had a hard time making heads or tails just even of him getting on the space station. And then once he's on the station, he's talking to Snout. And after he's done talking to Snout, he immediately starts like seeing some weird things. And I'm like, wait a minute, what is happening? Like,
yeah, I mean, I get that the space station just itself is eerie, right? Because there's like, he talks about like the automats weren't in the docking bay. Like they're supposed to. They don't really talk about the automats much, but I think about them as like they're like automatons that just probably work on stuff.
Right.
And there were none of them, and that was like really weird to him. And when Snout sees him, he like doesn't greet him. He's like afraid of him.
Yeah, so right off the bat, you're getting these weird kind of vibes from the whole thing, is because he's also, Kelvin has never been to the space station. Which what is the space station called? Why am I forgetting? It's called something, right?
Solaris Station.
It is Solaris Station. Okay, so he's never been to Solaris because Solaris is like a long ways away from like Earth. Like it's not anywhere near Earth. Like it's not.
He doesn't talk about being in hypersleep though, does he? I don't remember.
No, but that was kind of what lost me the first time too. Is like he goes from the other station he's on, which was what, Polaris, was the like shuttle that took him, and then they launched him to Solaris. But
yeah, that's right where the book starts. It's like as he's descending to Solaris.
Right, but immediately Polaris is like gone, and the way I understood that is that Polaris, when they launched him to Solaris, was pretty far away.
Yeah, I do get that feeling too.
And they don't really explain it. That's kind of going to be a trend in this. There are things they explain very in depth.
The way I kind of think about it,
explain.
The way I think about it is like in this world, humanity has every technology that'll ever exist. Like they can do anything.
And I think you're right on that one, because I don't know if we get like a timeline what time that this book takes place in, but it's
because it doesn't really matter.
Right, but it's also clearly like extremely in the future because, uh, like you said, they have almost every technology we could ever think of,
Well, unless I'm wrong, but doesn't he say that the whole universe has been explored and the only other organism is on Solaris?
which is kind of why they put all their efforts into trying to understand it.
Right. And I think one of the big themes of this book is kind of hubris.
Yeah,
And so, okay, I mean,
kind of understand
do we
that.
want
Yeah.
to talk about like the ocean itself first?
Yeah. That's. I mean,
Because I mean,
as
I
good a
kind of
place
feel
to
like
start
it
as any.
is kind of a character.
Yeah, and a really confusing one.
Well, that's kind of the point, though, right?
I
So
yeah, I think so.
as I said earlier, like this ocean, like very clearly, like shows signs of intelligence. They like lower equipment into it to like talk to it, and it like modifies the equipments to pick up different things than it should be able to pick up, and sends those signals. But then they like try it again, and it doesn't do anything. And so,
Yeah.
and they basically have explored the whole planet, like every square inch. And there've been a couple deaths, but most of them have been from accidents.
Right, from human error, basically.
Right. And the ocean actually won't even touch you. Like if you reach out your hand to touch it, it like goes perfectly over you, but it won't touch you in any way.
But yeah, there remains like a little barrier between your hand and the ocean organism.
And
But
I
it
wanna
is essentially like, I was just gonna say, from like what they see in their space station, it is like an ocean as we would see our ocean.
Yeah, but
There's
like
waves.
in direction, every direction.
Yeah, and so there's like waves, and there's like basically like white froth at the tips of waves when they roll over. But this ocean, it's not water. It is like basically a single organism covering this planet. It's
Yeah.
kind of mind-boggling.
And an organism that's so powerful, it controls the gravity of the planet.
Yeah.
Well, and they kind of they figure out what the ocean is thinking, right? And it's just like endless math equations that make no sense to us because they're so advanced.
Yeah, because like when it, like we kind of talked about earlier, that it like makes these structures, they're just like perfect examples of like
Yeah, architecture.
mathematic equations and
Yeah.
architecture. But it's like basically this thing, like, I don't know, I kind of picture it as if like you could hold your hand up, and in your palm of your hand forms like a perfect cube, and then sucks it right back down into your skin. Like that's like what this thing can do, but at any given time, at any given point on this planet.
For no reason, it seems like,
Yeah.
and in crazy immaculate shapes.
Right. And that's what they kind of describe, is that like the speed at which it can make the calculations to form the architectural structures is like they can't even, with their technology, they can't even calibrate it how fast it can do the equations.
And a couple people die trying to study them because they collapse so fast.
Yeah. So these structures, like we're kind of talking about, the way I kind of picture them is like, it would be, and they have different names for them because there's a few structures.
Yeah, but that's
look
just
different.
confusing.
It is, and so yeah. But the way they kind of describe them is what I picture when I'm listening to it, is basically like if at any one point in this, almost like a tentacle shoots straight up and out, but it's not a tentacle. It's like a perfect, looks like a building, basically like the World Trade Center, like just shoots straight up and out of this. And
see, I kind of see them more. I mean, I know exactly. You go ahead. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
That's just kind of how I picture it. So, like they're saying, at any one time, there's no rhyme or reason to this, though. These structures, like this, skyscraper building shoots up and out of this thing. It forms, it changes colors, it might change shapes a little bit a few times.
And it vibrating and oscillating like the whole ocean is.
Right. And then it might stay there for a little while, or it might
could stay there for years.
Or it might immediately start to decay and fall back into the ocean.
Well, I know he talks about some that like they form like wrong. Like you could see one piece wasn't perfect and then they just like dissolve and and it does something else.
It does something different, right?
So yeah, so this ocean is like we don't understand anything about it. Like it doesn't seem to make sense, and like all that they're trying to do is communicate with it.
And they're trying to understand like what its purpose is, basically.
And so Kelvin is coming to Solaris to help study the ocean. And I want to say he's a psychologist.
I believe so.
And that's
Yes,
significant
he is a
because he was the
psychologist, yeah.
only psychologist to go to Solaris.
Yeah, and so that kind of also tells you a lot about this, because like in today's world, when we find something new that is like a life form, we don't throw psychologists at it right away. You know, you throw biologists and physicists and some other stuff.
Guns.
So this is, or guns, yeah, absolutely. So that kind of tells you where the people are at in this, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. But I mean, they're throwing, yeah, like psychologists at this, essentially the planet. They're just throwing them at the
we'll
planet.
get more about Kelvin and his place, I think, into station
Right.
later. But but the planet isn't like hostile. Like it's never really trying to hurt anyone. Like the only time people have died is like if they like tried to explore those mimoids, I think is what they're called, and then
Yeah.
or if they had like equipment malfunctions. Do you think we should talk about the pilot sequence?
It's a little bit later though, right? We'll talk about it maybe as it kinda comes up.
So Kelvin pretty much Kelvin gets there and he starts reading this textbook, and you learn a lot about like the history of Solaris and a lot of like I guess the limitations on like it. And but I mean it makes it sound even in the beginning like that the research on Solaris is endless and that the resources are numberless.
Yeah, so that part, especially this time I listened to it, it really started that we talked about this the first time I had listened to this, but this time I really kind of was paying attention to what their, goings on are. And he starts to paint this picture because he's talking about these textbooks in this library.
Well, he's just reading
about
them to you word for word though.
Right, but he's also talking about like these books that he sees like that are in there. And he's talking about like,
how many tomes there are.
Yeah, he's talking about like this scientist's volumes 1 through 6, this scientist's volumes 1 through 4.
Yeah.
So you start to get this picture of, holy shit, these people have been doing this for a long time.
Well,
like,
even in the beginning, he like talks about a thing, and then he's like, actually, this is what the new theory thinks about that thing, but neither can be proven, so they're both like competing.
Yeah, and it's like this ongoing thing. But doesn't he mention that when Solaris was discovered, was 10 years old? Is that right? So he makes it sound like
no, that's not right. I think you're thinking of something else because I thought they've been there for like 300 years.
Is that what it is? See, I thought that it was basically his entire lifetime.
I think it's way later than that, if I remember right, because you were talking about 10, and I feel like that is a different thing. That
you could be right.
I think that's a different thing.
And you
I don't
could
think
be right
it says,
because it has been a long time.
How old he is.
Right. And it could be because it's been a long time. They basically do explain that.
Yeah, they did. Yeah, they. I mean, they don't come out and tell you, but just the feeling you get from the whole station, because it's even when he shows up, like everything is kind of like dingy and dirty and well worn.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and
he has to cook for himself and stuff like that.
Right, and he had never been to the space station, but he knew his way around from simulations. Yeah. And yet, when he's like walking around, he's like seeing.
They
all
only
stuff
mentioned
like
that once.
What's that?
That he was in a simulation, and that's why he knows his way around.
Yeah. That's pertinent information.
He says it in passing. I know, but then he talks about he's like on the Prometheus, it was quite a bit different, because when he's talking about the station that he was on there. But he doesn't really, like, the first time I listened to it, I didn't really understand that's how he knew his way around, was because he trained on a simulation this whole time.
Right.
He only says it once in the beginning.
Yeah, he mentioned because Snao, I think the first character he meets is like, do you need to know how to get there or whatever?
Yeah.
He's like, no. He's like, no, I've been through the simulation.
Yeah. And he trained there for a long time, I think. Yeah.
And that's what leads me to think that like how far away Solaris is, because like from Earth and getting on Polaris, and we don't know if he went on Polaris and
I thought it was the
or
Prometheus.
if it was. Why do I keep thinking Polaris? Is there something called Polaris in this? I swear there was. I could be wrong. I think you're right,
so.
Prometheus.
I think it's named the
right.
Prometheus.
I think you're right. I think I was just saying it wrong this whole time.
That's okay. Hey,
I was getting my.
you're saying the Russian saying.
I don't know. I was getting probably my sci-fi movies confused.
Oh, for sure. There's too many space things.
Anyways, but we don't know if he took a ship to get to the Prometheus or not. We don't know how far.
Yeah,
out
they don't talk about that at all.
Right.
And
which is
but that's kind of cool. The book literally starts the second Kelvin is in the orbit of Solaris.
Yeah.
Okay, so Kelvin, he's like reading, right? He's waiting for dinner, because isn't he supposed to meet with Snout at like a half hour? And he's like, he's one of those people that's really prompt, so he's like waiting to leave.
Yeah, he's waiting, so he's like on time. And so Snout, by the way, is like we mentioned, the first person he runs into upon boarding, and right away you're just like, whoa, this Snout dude is a shifty character. Like,
yeah,
the way he talks, and Kelvin's even kind of inner monologuing that, like his eyes are twitchy. He drinks all the time, and Snout is dropping these weird hints, like just he's saying like things like be careful and
do not attack. He shouts that at him.
Yeah, and Kelvin's like, what is this guy talking about? We're on a space station with 3 people or 4 people. What could there possibly be to be worried about?
And
so
I
that's
think
like your first. It's kind of like your first hint drop of like that something weird is going on.
Well, and I think in the beginning, it really makes you feel like there's just like a monster's gonna bust out of the closet.
Yeah,
and start killing everybody.
Yeah, so it really drops some like, alien type vibes.
Well, and for how old it is.
Yeah, that too. So yeah, and that's a good point, because the way like the tone this is written in, it's almost like a deeper, more, I don't know, meta thought process of how the story goes, versus like that, like normally in a book you start hearing, oh, be careful in there, and we're immediately going to see like a monster or something.
Yeah, but I think what happens to Kelvin is almost worse.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I would agree.
So yeah, so he goes to dinner with Snout. I don't think much happens. They talk about Sartorius a little bit.
Yeah,
Sartorius he's the other guy that's on the station.
Yeah.
And he like locked himself in the lab and will not come out
for anything. And we're going to find out a little bit why. We're going to find out why.
You don't really learn much about him. And that's kind of what I like.
That is true, actually. We know why, but we don't know why. Like, as little sense as that makes, we'll kind of talk about that.
Okay, yeah.
And
he goes.
So,
go ahead.
And Kelvin is still asking about Gabarian, which Gabarian was the.
Right, he was the guy that he was coming to see.
Right.
No, wait. Okay, we actually skipped a little part. I don't know. I don't know if this is pertinent or not. But there's a part when Kelvin is in Gabarian's room, and he's like looking around, and then he holds the door so Snout can't get in.
Yeah. Which was weird to me. That was also something that like.
It was super weird.
It went right over my head too, because
the first time I listened to it, I didn't understand that's what he was doing, because it's like so subtle. He's like, I heard a jiggle of the knob and I grabbed onto it, and then I felt a pressure release, and then I heard footsteps walk away, and he doesn't say anything else about it, and then he just keeps doing what he was doing.
Right.
Yeah, and I didn't really understand that he was stopping him from coming in.
Yeah, and he talks to Snout about it a little bit later.
Yeah,
because Snout's like, well, why'd you hold the door? And he's like, I didn't know it was you.
Yeah.
So it's really early on though, right? Where after Snout's kind of telling him to be careful, that he sees this woman, right?
Oh yeah, dude, you're right. I think when he's on his way back to his room from Gabarian's room, he sees that like black, huge, like from Africa, like black lady, like she's like topless with like a grass skirt
in like
on, right?
a grass skirt. Yeah, that's how I understand it. She's like topless with like a grass
and
skirt,
he's like
no shoes,
shocked, and watches her walk past, and he can like smell how sweaty she is, and she doesn't even pay attention to him at all.
Yeah, and like, right, she doesn't look at him, and then she walks down the hall past him, like doesn't even look at him or anything, and she goes into Gabarian's room, right?
Yeah, she goes into Gabarian's room. That's right.
Yeah, so like,
No, actually, that's not right. She keeps going through the hallway to like the freezer.
oh, is that what it is?
Yeah.
See, I swear to everyone, I just listened to this not even that long ago, and that's
Dude, it is hard to understand what's happening, to be fair.
yeah. And I mean, we don't want to make this too much of like a book report style. Like, obviously, we're bouncing around.
I feel
a
like you
lot.
have to talk about everything in this.
Yeah, I mean, we just for anybody who's still with us on this one, we bounce around a lot, but we're trying to avoid making it like I said, book report. Like, and then this happens, and then this happens. Like, obviously, we want you to just go listen to it for yourself, and then come back and join us for the conversation. Is mostly what we're interested in.
Yeah, and then you could be like, I had those same opinions.
Yeah,
or you could be like, these guys are the worst. I'm writing an angry letter right now.
And you would be the first one to send us an email.
Please send us hate mail. I want it.
Yeah, because we got no mail as of right now, so we welcome that. Anyways, so when I first listened to this, especially when I first listened to this, and I was already within the first whatever this is hour, and I was already off track. Hearing this part, like he sees now all of a sudden he sees this lady, this like half naked lady walk past him in the hallway. I was really like, okay, what is going on?
Yeah,
I
me
don't
too.
understand. Yeah, I was lost completely at this point. This was like what did it for me, like what completely lost me.
See, the first time I listened to it, like coming up is the part when I was like, I have no fucking idea what's happening anymore.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So he sees that black lady, and then he talks to Snout, but he like is really coy and weird about the way he tells Snout about it. It's so weird.
Yeah, because he, like, Snout was hinting that something's wrong. Kelvin
Right.
doesn't know what was wrong.
Right, but Snout
But
wouldn't
then
come
when-
out and say it.
Right. And so then when Kelvin sees this lady, he also is like torn in his head. He was like, is that real? Or did I just imagine that?
You're right. I forgot that he first he thinks he's hallucinating.
Yeah,
forgot
he
about
thinks
that
he's
part.
like he thinks he's like going crazy like when he
Right.
gets there.
He talks to Snout, and then he like goes and sets up this experiment that he has to do these calculations that the satellite is doing, and he's trying to match them. And so if he's insane, he wouldn't be able to do it. And so he's like able to do it, and he's like, oh shit, this is all really happening.
Yeah.
And then he sees notes of somebody else doing the same thing that he was
they
doing.
had done a similar experiment to make sure they weren't also like going crazy.
And dude, and I don't know if you noticed this, but he says, and the handwriting looks very familiar because they're Gabarians.
Oh, okay. That kind
But
of
that's
makes
all
sense.
he says about it.
Yeah. I think I remember him saying that, but that's also the thing is you're never told like how old this space station is. So
Right.
you don't know how long this cycle has been happening.
Yeah, you have no idea. In the beginning, I thought Kelvin was like gonna be like part of a huge team of people.
Yeah,
it
and that's
first
what
started.
that's what you'd kind of assume by him going to like a space station. You would assume there's like a lot of people. And then once you find out it's like a research station, you're like, oh, well, there's going to be a lot of people. But what we kind of find out is that this has literally been going on for so long, and they've literally been learning nothing, that they've almost
they've actually been getting like more questions about everything. It's like, what? We understand less of this now than we did before.
Right. And so the thing is they basically have all but like given up anyways. So they're sending like very few people. They're keeping very few people staffed for these
and very few
experiments.
people are even interested in it anymore.
Yeah,
I mean,
because
especially in the beginning when Kelvin's reading the old stuff, it makes it sound like Solaris is the hottest topic in the world, and everybody in the whole world wants to know as much as they can about it. And it was like part of his schooling growing up.
Right. It was like Pokemon Go.
Yeah.
Like, it like blew up. Nobody knew where it came from, and it like blew up, and then now nobody gives a rat's ass about Pokemon Go.
Yeah.
So,
exactly.
But obviously this took a lot longer time span than Pokemon Go did to die. So
So yeah, I mean, this is one of the main things I like about this book is like that. Obviously, people are like they want to know, they want to be able to communicate with this ocean, but like they're not showing any results. So why are they gonna just keep pouring money to it? They're not.
But that's also an interesting thing that I thought, and I thought this is what people would do is
Yeah, it is.
we would just continue to pour money into something that is basically pointless. Like it's essentially pointless. But
Yeah,
yet they
right.
just
There's no
continue to
reason to
throw
even.
money at it.
There's no reason to even try and talk to this ocean, and
Right.
yeah, because
But
it's so different.
but somebody thinks they should be able to talk to this thing, so they
Well,
just keep
and I mean,
throwing
doesn't
money at it.
Kelvin comes in with a lot of confidence? It seems like that he's going to be able to make a breakthrough on Solaris.
Yeah, so when I think about that too, I think about like that's how
Well, okay,
that's
go ahead.
well, I was just gonna say like that's I almost think about it like when like well you recently started a new job, and a lot of times you come into there thinking that, and so you come into this thinking like, oh man, we should do this different and this different and this different, but n- me from like where like my point of view, because I've done that, come into places and be like, hey, we should change this and this and this and this. It's like you also can't think that you're the only one who's had those ideas. So like
Right.
that's what I get. That's where when Kelvin starts reading these books and he starts realizing like, oh man, they've tried all
Well,
these things.
one thing I really like about this book is that Kelvin himself is really deeply flawed as a person,
Yeah.
and
Oh
he's
yeah.
very, very, very naive when he shows up. He's
Yeah.
super duper naive, and like he doesn't really get a good picture of the story because he ends up getting too caught up in what's happening to him.
Yeah.
And he's so freaking I like Kelvin as a character because I think he's so human because he's like mean and petty and I don't know like I just like Kelvin a lot. I think he's really well written.
Yeah, and I agree. And I think for that reason, kind of like what I was just saying, is like he's that guy showing up at a new job thinking
Yeah.
he's going to change the way everything was done. But it's like that's not always the case. You're not always going to be that person. And there's nothing wrong with that. But like that's what makes him so human in this is that like I said, I could relate to that. I've been that guy who shows up
Yeah.
and you immediately think you could change all these things and change the way everything
Well, I
works.
kind of get the impression, I mean, they don't say it, but I kind of get the impression that Kelvin is kind of like he's like like a young all-star among the Solaricists.
Well, and that could be. They don't really fully say what is he. They do say his age at some point because
He was 20 when Hare died. He was 20,
that's
and
right.
then it's 10
He
years
says
later, so
it's
he's
been 10
39.
years. Yeah, that must be where I got the 10 years from.
He's 30, I think.
Yeah, so he's like 30 years old. Yep, I think you're
Yeah.
exactly right.
And I get the feeling that he's a young Solaricist, like one of the only ones left, even because just the way he talks about it, and he had like you learn this much later, which I kind of like that you don't really get to know much about Kelvin the first time through until the end.
Yeah, and we learn a lot when his visitor shows up.
Do you want to talk about that? Let's talk about that right now because I feel like we got to start talking about that because these are so important to this book.
Yeah.
So Kelvin goes to his room and he like goes to sleep and he has like a really weird, crazy dream, right? And then he wakes up and he sees like a silhouette of somebody, but somebody looks really familiar, just like standing over him.
Yeah, and this is where you start like connecting back to like this, the black lady you saw earlier, and you're like, wait a minute, like what is going on? Is he delusional? Like what's happening? And
Well, no, but he already proved that he wasn't hallucinating.
right, but still, to us as the
Right.
reader, you're like, whoa, what is now what's going on? Is he dreaming still? And doesn't he?
Yeah,
He
Kelvin
like
thinks
specifically,
he's dreaming.
yeah,
And then
but
he's all
doesn't.
like cocky and he's like, "Oh, at least this is a dream where I know I'm dreaming. I can control my dreams."
Yes, that's right. Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. Doesn't he like mention that he thinks he's dreaming too?
Yeah, he says it out loud.
Right.
He says it to Hare is her name, and she's still 19 and just as beautiful as she ever was. I get the impression that she's supposed to be really pretty.
Yeah, that's kind of what the picture that they paint as well. And so Hare is someone that Kelvin knew. That's all we find out right off the bat. It's someone Kelvin knew. We don't really know a lot about it. We know that he clearly was like in like a relationship with this person. Like basically the first time you
Right,
hear it,
because
you
she
know it's
starts
not like his
loving on
sister
him
or
like
something.
immediately.
Yeah, so you know it's not like his sister or something weird like that. Like you know it's someone he was like in love with. But that's it. That's all we find out. She, and I say she was because right off the bat, Kelvin starts dropping these hints as to like, oh well, she shouldn't be here for
Dude,
multiple reasons.
I love the part that like as soon as he grabs her arm for the first time, he looks for the pinprick and it's there.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah,
mean,
which
obviously
is
the first time there's no way you would know what that was about.
right.
But
But
dude,
yeah.
like when you listen to it again, you're like, oh shit, dude, he drops so many hints to what's happening the whole
Yeah.
time.
Mm-hmm.
And Hare is kind of confused, right? She's like doesn't really understand like where she came from, how she got here, how she even found Kelvin, and who she
Right.
calls Chris.
Right. That's his name is Chris Kelvin. We learned that, but I mean that we basically only know him as Kelvin. Everybody else refers to him as Kelvin. And so yeah, she is like confused as to why she's there, and essentially the reader is going to be too, because you're like, wait a minute, Kelvin had to get there on a shuttle and she just showed up, so what is happening? But she's real, she's very much real, she is there with him.
Yeah.
She is physically real, she is there with him.
Oh, and he notices the dress does like he has to take it off because he's gonna put her in coveralls or something like that, and the dress doesn't have a way to be taken off. It was like it was made on top of her.
So yeah, and that's what's so cool though, is like he tells her like I can't remember if it's the first time. I'm gonna get a little ahead of myself. It's the first time or
That's
second
okay.
time. He tells her she needs to like take it off, and he goes to help her, and yeah, there's no zipper like down the back like a normal dress would have.
That's
But
the
then
first
he's
time.
like looking at it. Yeah, so he's looking at this dress though, and he's like, well, wait a minute. There's no way you could get this on or off if there's
Yeah.
no zipper.
Well,
So
and one other thing that Hare's memory seems to have like she remembers things that there's no way she could remember because they happened to Kelvin after she had already died.
right.
And so she like talks about stuff that there was no way that Hare would know.
Yeah, and so that's the kicker, is we find out that Hare is dead. She killed herself. So
Yeah.
that's why it's weird that she's there now on the space station, and she's very much real.
Well, okay,
And
but Kelvin like immediately once he figures out like how creepy it all is, he like tries to like tie her up, and she like breaks free instantly. He like closes her in between the doors, and she like, I mean, I guess she isn't really right either, but like some crazy amount of force like throws the door out of Kelvin's hands. Like there's nothing he can do. And he like she's supposed to be like this tiny little frail girl. I get the feeling that she's
Right.
not very big. And he like tries to restrain her elbow, and she throws him so hard like there was no way he could stop her from doing that.
yeah,
And
so
she
then
says, right, that I have to be able to see you. Like that is the rules. It's like I have to be able to see you or I'm going to do whatever it takes to get to you.
yeah, and that's yeah. So that leads to some like weirder stuff happening a little bit later in the story. And so so then one of the first things Kelvin does then is he like takes her, puts her in like a jumpsuit, and puts her in his
Dude, the
like,
first time
space pod.
I listened to this, I was
Right?
like, what? I was like, Kelvin's just going to leave? Okay.
Yeah, but yeah, because he gets her
Oh,
dressed,
okay. Hang on.
puts her in
I
the
feel like
space pod.
we need to mention something. Snout and Sartorius, the little bitty scene of our Sartorius, were both very, very sunburned when he saw them.
Yeah, that's true. That is true. That he said that Snout especially, because he sees Snout a lot. He sees Snout in person too. He doesn't ever see Sartorius in person.
No,
Sartorius
he
is
does see
always on, like,
Sartorius in
video
person
calls.
one time, but that's
Is
not
that
till a little bit later.
till later? Yeah.
So
That's
yeah,
what I
he
mean, for
freaking
the most part.
launches Hare out of the thing, and but she's like beating the crap out of the inside of the ship, like an immense force is trying to get out of the ship, like something
Yeah.
terrifying.
Yeah, like he can hear the straining and popping like at the bolts that he
Yeah.
bolted the door shut with on this pod. And he's
Yeah.
like terrified. So he launches Hari out into space. Just fucking launches her. She's gone.
That's his literally like his first reaction is just to fucking
Yeah.
get rid of her.
Yeah. Which,
Dude, I
mean,
get it.
I kind of do too. She's dead. He knows she's dead. So
Well, and
like,
that, and he was like a dick to her, but at the end.
yeah. Yeah. Because
So
he basically like abandons her to come here to the, or to start his like studies into whatever, to Solaris.
So,
Solaricism?
Kelvin, yeah, I mean, Solaricists is what they are.
Yeah.
You're right. There is like a name for it that's like biology, but it's for Solaris only.
Right.
remember
Yes.
what it
First, and that's another thing. There are multiple schools of thought on Solaris.
Yeah.
Sort of like there are multiple religions for like the same purpose. There are multiple thoughts.
Well, we'll get to
thought
that
processes.
a little bit later because it does come up. But
Yeah.
let's talk a little bit about. So Snout like he like shows up and he talks to Kelvin a little bit, but he like doesn't really mention the rocket very much, right? He's like, oh, he like acts like it's not a big deal.
He does.
and then-
Well, and Kelvin doesn't want to tell Snout what he did.
Yeah.
He doesn't even
Well,
want to tell
no, but
Snout
Snout
that he
knows
met
because he has a
Ari.
fucking super sunburn.
Yeah. Because like
Doesn't he
they
say something
open
to
that
him like
launch door, right?
he's like, you're a bit pink, aren't you?
Yeah.
And
It's from
then
them-
Kelvin notices, oh shit, Snout's like all fucking sunburnt too.
Right.
So Snout did the same fucking thing.
Yeah. And then we kind of finish out that like first day, and the next day he kind of has this like dream again, right? About Hare again, and she's there again. She's back. Like
Yeah.
the following day. Which the days are weird on Solaris because there's two suns, so literally it's like one sun goes down and the other one is like coming up, so there's never really like darkness where they're
Yeah.
at on the station either. The station's outfitted with like all these like shutters and stuff that they close to make sure the sun doesn't beat through their windows all day long, but it's like always in the daylight. And one sun is red and one is blue, and I thought that was super cool.
Yeah, it is pretty cool, and it like makes the ocean look different colors.
Yeah, depending on which sun is up during the day. I thought that was kind of sweet.
Yeah, so Hare comes back, but she doesn't seem to remember what happened the day before. She's acting like the same exact way that she first acted when she showed up.
Yeah, the night before. She's like
Yeah.
the same person. Like there was same person.
Yeah, same
There's
person.
no there's like no, she's not like, oh, you tried to kill me, like none of this
Yeah,
stuff.
and then she
like-
pulls out a dagger, and then an alien
Yeah.
busts through the vents. You're like, oh god.
yeah. It's
No,
definitely
none of that.
not an
This is
American
all
story.
so slow and brooding. But
Yeah.
even so, when Kelvin kind of realizes, he's like, oh shit, I'm stuck with her no matter what. But he's like really mean and cold to her the whole time, and she just wants like Kelvin to tell the truth about like where they are in their relationship.
Yeah. Yeah, and so we find out he kind of basically lets on to Snout that Hare is there.
No,
And-
Snout fucking comes into the room and sees her, and he doesn't try and hide her.
That's right.
He doesn't try and hide at all.
Right. So, but then though, Snout is that this is kind of where Kelvin also is putting two and two together, and he's like, wait a minute, that black lady I saw before, who's that? And then
Yeah.
he talks to Snout about it a little bit, and Snout's like, oh yeah, we kind of all have visitors, basically.
Yeah, they call them visitors, or
Yeah.
and a good way to think about them is like simulacra. So they're like perfect copies of the other people.
Yeah.
And so basically what's happening, what I understand is happening, is somehow the ocean is like able to go into your memories and find like specifically painful people that you like didn't resolve things with fully, and making you have to deal with them.
Yeah, and it's something that's exactly it. It's like a very traumatic trigger for the person on the
Yeah.
space station. So we don't ever find out who Snout's visitor is.
Right, but I mean, it makes so much sense that as soon as Hare shows up, Kelvin is so absorbed, and he doesn't really pay attention to the other ones.
Right. And we know that from like the video calls that Sartorius has a visitor, but we don't ever find out who that is because he
No.
refuses to let anybody else see
Yeah.
who it is. And then the black woman that we saw before walk down the hallway was Gabarian's visitor, but we don't ever find out why. We have no
Nope.
clue why.
They don't talk
No.
about it at all. But I kind of like that because this story is about Kelvin. It's not about them.
And so the way that we kind of find out that these visitors are like something that the ocean is creating is that Kelvin tests her blood, right? And
Right,
he
yeah.
sees
Nothing.
he can see that. Yeah, he can see that it's not human blood. So she is physically a human, and she has thoughts, memories.
Well, right, but he like zooms down and there's no atoms at all.
Yeah, there's
So
like
it's like
nothing.
this can't be human.
Yeah. So that's how he comes to the conclusion that like it's something that the ocean has created that is physically real, but it's like the ocean is interacting with them in this way.
Okay, I want to talk about the ocean for a second. Do you think it's trying to do something? Do you think it's like conducting its own experiments on them? Because I mean, I have an
So
opinion.
the first time I listened, I mean, the first time I was just way lost, but I'll just go straight to the second time. The second time, I actually kind of thought more of it's almost like a proximity effect, in my opinion.
Oh, you think it was not even like it wasn't like a triggered thing?
I don't
I
think
never
that
thought
it's
about it like that.
necessarily the only reason I think
Damn,
that
dude.
is because how it just like it continuously happens, right? So Snout explains to Kelvin that they basically tried to kill their visitors the first time too, and they explain all these different ways they tried to kill their visitors,
Yeah,
but they
and
just keep coming
supposedly
back.
it just ends up hurting you. Because like
Right.
Snout has bloody knuckles when he shows up.
Yeah, but the visitors just keep coming back. So that's kind of why I was almost
Okay,
thinking
I
more of
never
its.
thought about it that way.
Well, what do you think it is?
What I think you were saying is probably makes more sense. But what I think it's doing is that I don't know what it's trying to do to the other people, but I think it's what it's doing to Kelvin is it's trying to show him that no matter what he did, Hare was going to kill herself.
Well, and that's possible too.
Because I feel like what the ocean is trying to do is to let these people forgive themselves.
So to me, the reason that I think it's more of just like a
Yeah, the proximity makes sense.
effect, the only reason that I think that is because what you're saying, while it makes sense, would lead to almost like this whole time we've been led to believe that like the ocean doesn't give a shit what the people are doing. Doesn't care.
Right.
It's just doing its own thing. It never cares what they're doing. So like for it to be doing kind of what you're saying would be almost too specific for me, for it to seem like it would concern itself with.
The only reason I say that is because the part when the pilot is like watching the ocean, like the way I think about it is like, so this guy fell out of another ship and the other guy's going out to look for him. And Kelvin gets all this information from like a little video clip of the guy's testimony on what happened and what he saw.
This part trips me out too.
So he like, they go through like some flying garbage and then he like flies over this thing. It's like a cone, right? With like swirling up. And he's trying to, he thought he saw like a spaceship, like a suit. So he's like going down there to see what's down there. And it's like this garden, but it's like made out of plastic. And there were like really specific people down there that he could like tell were different people that he'd never seen before. But then he goes to like another one and he sees this gigantic, I don't know how else to say, but it's like a huge baby that's like 60 stories tall, like sticking out of the ocean. And it's like testing out all the different moves like a baby can make, but it's like in a really weird way. Like half of its face is happy and half of its face is like super angry. Like it does stuff like humans would not be able to do. And to me, what's happening there is the ocean is just data mining that guy's memories.
And that does make a lot of sense. But that's kind of why that's almost another reason why I feel like what's happening to them on the space station is almost like a proximity effect, because they've never, especially Kelvin just got there. He's never physically interacted with the ocean.
Right, but it doesn't need to. Like all it needs to for is him to be within its atmosphere. It controls the gravity, dude.
But I know, and that's kind of what I mean, though. It's just like the fact that they're so close to this thing that these things just start happening to them.
But the only thing is, like, why would it make specifically somebody that's painful from your past if it was just proximity?
Well, see, and I don't know. I can't fully explain my logic. That's almost how I felt about it.
I feel like I know. I feel like it's trying to teach them something. Like that's what it's trying to do.
Well, that could be. I guess to me though, then is they've done all these things to try to communicate with the ocean, which we get another clip towards the end where Kelvin like goes down and he like lands and he tries to like
that's the very end.
Yeah, he tries to like
dude,
stick
there's
his
a lot
hand
of
close
stuff
to
that
this
helps.
thing. Well, I know that, but I'm saying
Right.
he tries to like stick his hand close to this thing and he basically says that something happens that's been documented numerous times is the ocean. That's where you learn that the ocean like comes up to his hand. It won't touch his hand. It like
But
kind
it
of
like
swirls over
inspects
him.
it, like I think about it like actually like lifting up and like looking at his hand and then
Yeah,
like,
it
slowly
does. And then it goes away. Like it's not interested in him.
Yeah.
I guess to me, if these things that's happening to them was the ocean showing specific interest in him or in them in general, it's like why wouldn't it have constantly shown interest in them, I guess.
I don't know. I almost feel like it's kind of testing out what it can do.
And that could be, yeah.
Because I get the feeling like it never had humans before. Because like especially when Hare first shows up, she's like stupid. And it's like the first time it's like it took a bad copy of her. Like the dress was wrong. You know what I mean? And then the second time the dress is right this time. Like it's like Solaris took note that he noticed the dress was wrong.
That's true. Yeah, I guess it is constantly pulling stuff from his mind. I mean, we only see her remade twice, but yes, each copy, and I think Snout mentions that, right? He says that each copy is basically different.
Yeah. And but they also like they get because like in the beginning he can like talk about stuff in front of her and she doesn't really understand what he's talking about. She goes to read a book and doesn't she read it upside down?
Yeah, like something like that. Yeah, she's like it's like she's pretending to be a human basically.
Yeah, like she's pretending and she doesn't really know what she's doing.
Right.
But she's like saying all the right things. But she has to be next to Kelvin. Yeah, and Kelvin runs a bunch of experiments on her, right? And then he comes up with the idea to well let's back up a little bit. They think the reason why these simulacra are showing up, what do they call them? Visitors? Call them all sorts of things.
They call them a few different things because they want it to be like in code talk so that
they don't mention them as like people or beings ever.
Yeah.
But so before these visitors started showing up, they had conducted an experiment where they used like really harmful radiation on the ocean, and they'd never done that before. And like supposedly it's like against the whatever space council something, like they like broke the law to do it. But like shortly after that happened, the simulacra started showing up.
Right. See, and I guess that's the part that I fully did not grasp at all the first time I listened, because they don't tell you about that until later in the book. So
well, Kelvin comes across plans for it, and then he like talks to Snout about it, and Snout's like, I didn't have anything to do with that.
Yeah, and then doesn't Sartorius want to continue it?
Yeah.
Yeah,
because he talks about it. Yeah. Well, because they do towards the end when they like scan Kelvin's brain and send it out to the ocean, like they're trying to talk back.
Yeah.
And this whole time, Kelvin kind of gets really attached to Hare. I guess, I don't know. It sounds like he's in a nightmare world, but he's like content.
Yeah. And it is kind of weird too, because we get a lot of like he just kind of goes about his daily stuff. Like, it's not like a oh my God, I'm losing my mind. What am I going to do? He just, he gets up, he has his meals. He just basically too, he like settles in with Hare, they have their daily routine that they go through. The whole time though, he's just kind of trying to do some research and trying to kind of make sense of all this.
And then I think this goes on for quite a while, right? Where he like skips over a bunch of weeks. And then
and so we also do find out that Gabarian is dead because
he goes and sees her in the freezer.
Yeah, he finds like Gabarian's body with this woman laying with him like under this sheet, but that's it. He doesn't know if that woman is dead. He can't figure out if she's dead. But he like touches her.
I thought.
Yeah, it is. But he like touches her, and she like nothing happens. But
she lifts her foot like a sleeping dog would lift its paw. Because I love that line.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. But so that's what he finds so weird is that Gabarian is clearly dead, but this
Well, and she's
woman,
sleeping in the deep freeze, and she's fine.
yeah, but he wonders too. He's like, if she stays in here, will she die eventually? Like
Yeah.
what? Because she just wants to stay with Gabarian. She doesn't want to leave Gabarian.
Yeah.
Well, I
Well,
don't
as far
think
as I
we ever
understand,
find out
she
what happened
can't.
to him.
No, no, Gabarian killed himself.
Oh, he does kill himself.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Yeah, he kills
Oh
himself.
yeah, yeah, commits suicide. That's right.
Hmm.
That's right. Yeah.
And so, like one night because he's been explaining like he's been having these like insane dreams, and it feels like his brain is being mined for information. Like he wakes up and he's just like exhausted from
Mhm.
sleeping because it feels like something has just been stripping him of everything.
Yeah, so I guess that your theory makes a lot more sense then in that case, that this thing is like probing them and like trying to find things out. And now that I'm thinking about it, that makes sense. They're trying this new experimentation on the ocean. They thought it had no effect. Turns out
Yeah.
this is probably the effect it had.
Yeah.
Is
And
this thing is now like reaching out to them and like essentially grabbing their mind.
I almost feel like it's experimenting to see what it can convince, like what it can do with people, like
Sure.
what it can go through. I mean, maybe each person is experiencing a different type of thing, but I just get the feeling with Kelvin, especially because what happens later twice is that like it's the ocean is trying to show Kelvin that no matter what he would have done in that situation with Hare, she was gonna kill herself no matter what.
Yeah. Right.
And so yeah, okay, that one night he has a weird dream where like Gabarian shows up and talks to him and says like some really specific things like that only like if Gabarian was alive he would know.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
And but then like he starts to kind of like wait, like where you're like half asleep, half awake, and he starts to wake up but he's still hearing Gabarian's voice, not in the dream anymore. And then he like kind of realizes that it was like the tape player that was under his bed was playing. Like somebody was listening to it. It was Hare. So Hare was listening to. I mean, there was like he doesn't ever actually listen to the whole tape of what Gabarian had to say.
No.
You only get snippets of it, and whatever that did, like really shook Hare. And then I don't really understand this still. Does she like get away from him to do this, or is she still with him when she tries to do this? When she tries to kill herself again?
Because what's she do? She like ingests an oxygen bottle essentially, right?
Yeah, and it's like supposedly so cold it would kill you in seconds.
It should have killed her like immediately, basically. Yeah, but he essentially saves her life.
Well, I thought because she's the simulacrum, doesn't she heal super fast?
Well, yeah, and she's not a human, right? So that's another part where we're like, oh, geez, these people are definitely not people.
Well, and then Hare starts telling him like, yeah, that she doesn't want to be alive, like he doesn't love her anymore, like, and it basically sounds like probably what she was talking like before when Kelvin because what Kelvin did, I guess we didn't really talk about it. So what Kelvin did with Hare was he like brought home these shots from work, and he's like, yeah, these will kill you if you inject them, and then he like left them there on purpose, and like told Hare they were done, and packed up all his shit and left.
Yeah.
And
it's just fucked up.
yeah. And Hare had told, and he had saved her from killing herself before, right?
I think so, yeah.
Like she had tried to kill herself before, and he left knowing full well that she was going to kill herself. Like, what does she say? You know what this means, which is so dark and it's so not very many words, but it's so like, oh Jesus, Kelvin, you knew what she was going to do.
Right, and you almost get the idea that like at first he kind of like wanted to be away from her. Like that's why he was like okay with that. He was okay with her killing herself.
Well, he gives Snout a very short version in the beginning, and then later, as he's thinking about what led him to Solaris, he actually extrapolates on all the things he did, and throughout the book, he says like little things about what he was doing on purpose to make Hare want to kill herself, and because he knew what he was doing.
Yeah, it's really weird, like a really weird like way for that to go down.
Yeah, so she tries to kill herself, and then and then like they're like sitting in bed and they're talking about something, and then she like drinks juice, which is weird because the simulacrums don't eat, and she drinks the
Yeah,
juice,
yeah.
and then she's like, "You want some?" And he's like, "No, I'm good." And she's like, "Drink to my health." And she drinks, and then he like immediately falls asleep, but he like notices that Hare leaves the room,
Yeah, that's
and then
right. Yeah, she like
just
drugged him.
yeah, she like doesn't come back.
Yeah, because then doesn't she basically wants Snout to kill her. She wants to
Right, because
die.
they made a thing that they think will get rid of the the visitors.
Yeah.
And Kelvin
So
tried to convince them that if the visitors were destroyed, they would like explode the station. But he like tells you he like uses the wrong math on purpose to make the number like
yeah,
way bigger than it should be. And they don't know
right.
enough about the thing he's talking about to disprove him.
Yeah. Yeah, because he is like super attached to her now.
Yeah,
Like he starts like thinking about going back to Earth with her and like starting a life with her and stuff, but Snout is like, dude, we can't do that. We don't even know if they will survive if they leave the
Yeah.
area of this planet. We don't know that. But
Well,
like Kelvin's convinced that he can take her back to Earth and essentially start their life over again.
well, Kelvin's pissed when he finds out that Hari's gone. But I mean, this whole time it basically feels like he's being tortured. But then he's like, "Oh my God, I loved her actually."
Right.
And then Snout's like, "Oh, you could call up to the rocket you sent up and see if there's a version of her alive up there if you really want to bring her back."
Yeah,
And
yeah,
Kelvin's
yeah,
like,
yeah. That's right.
"No."
Yeah, because Snout is convinced that when they first send their visitors out, like in the launch pods, like that they're basically still alive in there somewhere,
Yeah.
just like floating around,
Which
like
is
that
creepy,
they won't
and
die.
they leave it open ended, and I love that.
Yeah, they make it sound like there could be multiple copies of all of these
Well,
visitors at any
and
given
throughout the
time.
story, Kelvin hears other rockets going off, and so you know what's happening.
Oh yeah, yeah, because we never see Snout's visitor, but we
No,
know he has one.
yeah,
But Snout is able to leave his visitor clearly because Snout is
I
moving
feel like
around the
the
station at all
rules are
times.
different for each person.
Right,
See,
and
I,
that's
I
kind of what I.
I wonder if each thing is like a different thing that the ocean is trying to accomplish. I
And
mean,
that could
they're
be
obviously all traumatic, but like, freaking, what's the guy's name? Sartorius. Like,
Sartorius.
you get the sense that like his visitor is crazy, rambunctious, and all over the place all the time.
And it also could his struck me as like possibly like a younger child
Yeah,
because when they're talking to him on like the video calls, he has like his screen covered so you can't see
yeah.
what's happening in his end of the video call. But like the one time that like the thing slips and Kevin can't really see anything, he sees like I can't remember, like something goes by the edge of the screen.
Yeah, at
But
first he thinks it's like a
Sartorius is
gold
just
circle, and then he realizes it's a straw hat.
right. And then Sartorius just starts yelling at this thing. It's always like
Yeah.
he's like, "Go away, leave me alone!" Like
Yeah.
he can't get away from this thing that's with him. So yeah, they're all clearly different things.
And I mean, maybe because we don't really know, maybe Kelvin's is the only one that's traumatic, but Sartorius seems to be very ashamed of his.
Well, yeah, that's just it. Never wants anyone to see
Yeah.
who's with him. Probably just in case somebody finds out who it is. Like we don't know.
Yeah, but he's like super secretive, and we don't ever see Snouts, which
Yeah, you never see Snouts, nor does he really make mention of it.
no, not really. Which I don't know. I kind of like that. I like that there's like a whole nother thing going on at the station too that it's not even really about because Kelvin is so absorbed in what's happening to him.
Yeah, and I didn't like that the first time I listened. Again, though, I was completely lost. So like this.
Yeah, it gets even more confusing when you're like, straw hat, what, who, where?
Yeah, exactly. But so like the second time, when obviously I kind of knew what was happening, I was like, oh, okay, this is pretty interesting that we don't know about Snout's visitor. We know he has one, but we never see or he never really talks about him or anything.
I mean, Snout is really, other than Hare, the only place that there's a lot of dialogue in the book.
Yeah, because he has those video calls like with Sartorius, but
Yeah.
Sartorius is kind of a douche.
Yeah,
Actually,
Kelvin like immediately doesn't like Sartorius.
Yeah, but you know what's funny is Sartorius kind of strikes me as being similar to Kelvin. He's just been there longer.
Yeah.
That's all it struck me
I think
as.
that's why Kelvin doesn't like him.
Yeah.
Because they talk about that Sartorius, even when these things started happening, he still like shaves his beard. He makes sure his shoes are polished. He does everything that he needs to do. And it's very clear that frickin' Snout does not do that. Because Snout's
Right,
got,
yeah,
like,
Snout's been,
beard
like,
when he shows up,
drinking.
he's like
Yeah.
drunk. Yeah, and
Right.
and Kelvin, even the whole time with Hare, he like is super careful about everything, and then till up to a point, and then he just starts growing a beard. And there's a huge scene where Snout's like, if you're growing a beard, that means you're giving up. Like you can't do this, Kelvin. Like why won't he asks him, he's like, why won't you shave?
Yeah. Yep. It is kind
I
of
don't know.
weird.
I thought that part was pretty big. Well, I kind of looked into it a little bit because it is kind of a sign in those like European countries that like if you have a beard, like you don't care about yourself.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Great. I was just thinking my beard was starting to look pretty good because
No, dude, you're fine. This is America. But like yeah, like if you're looking scruffy like that, it's like a shameful way to look.
That's interesting though. I mean, technically we do kind of have that over here though. Like when you go to like a job interview, like you don't want to be like completely unshaven, like, hair all down your neck and up your face. Like if you have a beard, that's fine, but you want to trim it up and clean it up because if you don't, again, it looks like you're saying like it's like a sign that like you don't take
Like,
care of yourself.
yeah,
That you
it's
don't
like
care.
it's like a sign that you've given up.
Yeah, it's interesting. I never really thought about that.
Yeah.
That is interesting.
And I feel like that's a big scene. That it's like oh my gosh, because I mean you only ever see things from Kelvin's perspective, and so you don't really know how the other people are seeing him,
Right.
or how Hare even sees him. Because I mean Kelvin, I get the feeling that he's like he's a lying, like he's evil. He's kind of mean.
Yeah, he kind of is. And I don't know. His character is interesting.
Yeah, I think he's really interesting.
And it's really hard to sort of lock down because we're told from his point of view. So
Right,
everything
and
we're going to
you
hear
never know
is
if he's like lying or telling the truth or
yeah, and that's what's kind of interesting is you don't really know what's like good or bad because to Kelvin
Yeah.
it's all good. So
exactly.
we don't fully find out that he is he's kind of a dick sometimes and stuff.
But it almost felt like he was just doing what Hare wanted, not what he wanted. So his heart wasn't in it anyway. So I feel like, dude, I'm telling you, that's what the ocean is trying to show Kelvin. It's like it didn't matter. Your heart wasn't in it, dude.
Right.
Even with
think you're
a second
right, yeah.
chance, she still killed herself.
Yeah. That's interesting. That is interesting. Dang, I might have to listen to it for a third time.
Dude, I'm so happy you actually like it this time.
I did. I really did, to be honest.
I told you it's so good.
Yeah. No, and I did myself a lot more justice this time though by paying attention, making sure I was listening. If I missed something, I rewound it, so I made sure I got the information and stuff. So I did like it much more this time than the first time.
I guess
Because I didn't like it at all the first time. I mean, I told you.
Yeah, you told me you hated it, and I was like, what? I loved that book.
And it's just because I was super confused the first time I listened to it. So.
Well, I think that's pretty much everything, right? I think we got it all.
Yeah, the ending still is confusing for me. So at the end, Kelvin makes some decisions. I don't fully understand what they are though still. Doesn't he send out some messages and stuff? And don't they talk about like something mobilizing to come to Solaris? I don't fully.
No, they talk about
that.
maybe doing that, but they don't actually do it.
Is that what it is? See,
him and Snout talk about what they could do to leave the station, but they don't actually do it.
Oh, okay. See, I was fully confused on that. I thought
because the end, like you talked about, they come across like one of those big structures, and it's whatever they're called. It has a name. They all have really hard to understand names.
Yeah,
and
it's
the
like
first time I listened to it,
Symmetriad.
Symmetriad, yeah. The first time I listened to it, I was like, oh man, I got to remember all these terms, but they don't end up really mattering.
No, and the nice thing is there's only like 3 of them.
Like
three main, like the Symmetriad. There's like 2
the
other
memoids.
ones, but memoids. Yep. Yeah, those are like the 2 main things that they talk about.
So Kelvin like goes out to see it, and then Snout's like, don't you dare, and he's like, what? I would never. Like they never actually say like kill yourself or do anything like that, but they know exactly what they're talking about.
Right. Yeah, and then
Yeah.
right at the end, right, that's when Kelvin like goes down to the planet and he lands on like a whatever
Yeah.
memoir, Simitriad, whatever it is. That's when he like interacts with the ocean. But realistically, at the end of it all, and we kind of talked about this the first time we both listened to it, and more so this time, I think, is that um, it's interesting that like no matter how much they study this, though, even at the end of the book, they don't know any more about the ocean than they did at the
Well,
beginning.
that's why I said I think this book is about hubris, because no matter what, like there are things that humans are never going to understand.
Right.
And it doesn't matter how long you freaking try to understand them, you're not really going to get it. And I guess we kind of skipped over a part where Kelvin has a talk with Snout, and he talks about like his idea that the ocean is like a malformed god, like it's a god that formed wrong, and is like actually
Oh yeah.
it can affect the world of no matter, but it's stuck in the world of matter, so it's unable to like leave this world. Like that's what he thinks the ocean is. It's like a god that was just made wrong.
Yeah. That's right. Which is very interesting because like I said, the ocean essentially is like one organism. Just covers this
the
whole
whole thing.
planet. Yeah.
And they've tried to take the ooze away from it, and it like dies like
Yeah,
really
it
quickly. And
can't.
there's nothing they can do. They've imitated the atmosphere of Solaris. Doesn't matter. They've tried taking tons of it at once. They've tried taking very little. It doesn't matter. It just dies.
It just dies. Yeah, it can't be away from like the main planet. Yeah, that's right. Though I forgot he does that like God talk where he
Yeah.
thinks that it's just like a flawed God, like because that's what he says. He's like, think about that. Like the Greek gods, they're all these amazing things, but he's like, think about what if one of them had a huge flaw. And he said, doesn't he explain it like not a flaw, like not physically disabled, but like
Right.
it has a flaw. Like so, say instead of being like the God of justice, you're like the God of whatever, making sure people like stub their toe when they walk too close to something. Like it's still a power, but it's a very flawed power.
Right. And that's what he's talking about with the ocean, is like
Yeah,
that it has
that's
like
right.
this immense power, but it can't really do much because
Mhm.
because it's like a flawed god. Like it just
Yeah.
doesn't have a good way to communicate with anything else. And
Right.
he
That is
talks about a
interesting.
lot that too, that the ocean must be profoundly lonely.
Yeah, because too weren't some of their first experiments they literally like threw physical things into it like a
Yeah.
desk, and then like they throw this desk into it, and basically one of these like structures would erupt from it that was like the
Yeah.
same shape as the desk,
It
and
was like
then it would just
copying it.
fall. Yeah, and then it would just fall right back into the ocean. Like it knew what they were doing, but it still had no way of like communicating with them in any way.
Yeah. It's a good book.
It is an
I think so.
interesting book for sure. I will definitely give it my recommendation the second time around though,
Oh,
because
that makes me so happy.
the first time around it was a hard one. I could not get behind it.
I think I said it earlier. If you want to listen to this book, you have to be ready to listen to it twice.
Yeah. And probably I wouldn't even say like back to back. You might
Yeah,
say
you
back
could
to
space
back,
it out a little bit.
but I would
Let
say
them things marinate.
it's been since the first time I finished it to this time, it's been probably about a year. And that was a good amount of time to go in between and then come
Wait.
back to it.
Sorry, I want to talk about Kelvin a little bit more, because I feel like we didn't talk about, because they talk about a little bit like how he came to attention of Gabarian, right? Because he wrote like a really controversial article about like the way the ocean moves or something like that. I want to say he attributed like some sort of like emotion to it, and that's why Gabarian like wanted to bring him to the station.
Yeah, because and Gabarian was like almost like an instructor, right, of his that
Yeah.
he I can't fully grasp how they were like studying under him, but they were like Gabarian was like
I
teaching
kind of
this
get the
school of
feeling that
thought.
Gabarian wasn't on Solaris the whole time. Like he was actually with Kelvin at parts.
That makes more sense. Yeah, because he said he's met Gabarian before.
Yeah, he has.
Yeah, he had never met Sartorius or Snout, but he had met Gabarian before.
And I want to say it's like Sartorius and Snout, just because we've mentioned that Kelvin is a psychologist. Like Sartorius and Snout are like isn't one of them like a physicist and something else, and one of them's like another like super highly advanced field.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, they're both like super smart, like scientists. Yeah.
Yeah.
That also goes back to something we talked about a little earlier. Is there's a lot of different. They talk about the different like schools of thought on
Yeah.
what there's like literally different schools, literal schools that people will go to learn about Solaris. One teaches one thing, one teaches another. It's sort of like, kind of like I was saying before, is like,
Yeah. Well, yeah. Like I'm gonna let you say it.
well, to me, it's almost like multiple religions, but they technically believe in the same thing, like Catholicism and Christianity.
He even says like in this world nobody really believes in religion except for the Solarists. Like they believe that there's something like it's basically like that much of a dogma of the way you have to think about this kind of stuff, that like it's so ingrained in these people it's like a religion to them.
They're like putting all their eggs in one basket.
Right.
It's the only other form of life they found in the reachable universe. So and they can't even like communicate with it. So people are literally just banging their heads against the wall, wondering why we can't communicate with this thing.
It's like trying to put water into a colander. It's just going to keep going out.
Yeah,
exactly. No matter how much you try.
I used to play this game, and it was like a Chinese game, and the guy was like, trying to find housing in the city is like trying to grab a flea with all 5 fingers.
What game was this?
I can't. Dude, it was old school. It was like remember those games where you laid out the city, and then like you put the little places for people to live in the houses, and then they would like come in and they'd move into the houses, but then you had to make sure that there were specific like services provided to them in that area that would like go
Sounds
around
like
the
city
block.
skylines.
But it was way less complicated than that. I'm trying to think of a game, if I have a game like right now in my library that would be like.
I'm sure you do. You love that stuff.
Getting way off topic. Actually, I know I have a game like it. It's exactly the same. Oh, it's called Lethis, Path of Progress. It's exactly the same concept, but this game was like old school, way back in the day. Anyways, way off topic. I just love that. It's like trying to grab a flea with all 5 fingers.
Okay, so I think we're pretty much good. I mean, if you made it this far and somehow you listened to this, but like didn't go back and listen to the book, like what's wrong with you?
Yeah,
and seriously, go back and listen to Solaris, because I'm sure you're like, what? I don't even know what these guys are talking about still.
Right, and we are terrible at staying on an actual like summary, because we're just bouncing all over the place. And as we remember,
I think we're just talking about the things we liked.
Well, and that's just it. We don't want this to necessarily. We don't want this to necessarily devolve into us just reading you a plot summary, because you can go do that for yourself. We just want to kind of drop our thoughts on specific things that we found interesting, and then like we do, we get off on tangents and talk about other things outside of that. But this book, obviously, this has been one of our longer episodes, so this book for us sparked a lot of interest. So we'd love to hear from other people who are interested as well.
Yeah, if you've ever read this and you want to tell us that we're wrong and it's actually the worst book of all time, I'll hear you out.
Yeah, which is a great segue into if you want to contact us, you can email us at kotpl.pod@gmail.com. That's going to be the easiest way as of right now, probably, to get in contact with us.
Do we have any emails yet?
As of the start of this, no. So I'm assuming no. I can check real quick just to, test everybody. No, we have nothing.
Dang.
So there's that. So we're waiting. We're waiting on our first emailer.
Yeah, our first hate mail.
Hey, either way.
Yeah, I would be happy with either one.
So we also are on YouTube now. So in case anybody, that's easier for anybody, if you got like paid YouTube subscription, you can listen over there. I only have the first episode up still as of right now, because I'm working on getting together all the audio to put that all together, but we'll be over there, so you can go over there and drop a comment if you want. What else, Bo? We got Facebook.
We're on the Facebook,
right?
Yeah. Knights of the Pageless Library Facebook page. If you'd like that, I'd be so happy.
You gotta say that again. Your voice went super robotic right there.
Oh, it happened to you too.
Oh man, that's probably my internet going.
Okay, I said, we have a Facebook page at, Facebook, Knights of the Pageless Library. I would be really happy if you guys would come and like it. I do all the Facebook stuff, so if it's terrible and you hate it, you should tell me about it.
Yeah, you'll have to tell him about it. It's funny enough, I am not a huge fan of social media. But I
Yeah.
love to absorb like podcasts and stuff. I just hate Facebook and Twitter. We have a Twitter now, right?
We do have a Twitter, yeah.
Oh my gosh.
It's the same as the email.
Yeah, that's right. KOTPL.
No, it's not. It's I forgot. We actually get the full name. It's Knights of the Pageless Library.
Oh, yeah. Sorry. We just made this literally right before we started recording. So
Yeah.
Yeah. So Knights of the Pageless Library over on Twitter. You guys can do whatever you do over there.
Do
tweet,
whatever Twitter does. Yeah, you
Yeah.
can twat us or whatever.
twat us through the internets over there. And we'd love
and
to
I
start
want to
hearing-
mention, the next one we're gonna do. We're gonna do another Turbo episode on Alien 3, which is an Audible original, and it is a dramatization of the unused script for Alien 3.
Is
So-
that what it was? Is that? Oh, okay.
Dude,
that makes
like
way
I
more
just said the
sense.
whole thing perfectly.
You
Did you like
dude.
that?
You did. You nailed it. And I'm excited because it's the first everything we've done up to this point is just an audiobook, and this is a
Yeah.
dramatization,
So this is actually
much
a
different.
whole different thing, and I think we'll
Yeah.
give you a little bit of a rundown. I think of the differences on the next episode, but I think Solaris is wrapped up. Bogus is a 2 thumbs up and like a green smiley face.
That's good. Yeah, I definitely give him my thumbs up too. I definitely
Just
recommend
one?
it. I'll give them both. I'll give both thumbs
Okay.
up actually for this one, and I highly recommend it. I highly recommend people go check it out, and then
And
come
please,
back here and talk to us about it.
please, if you're gonna listen to it, you gotta go for 2 rounds. And like Ryan said, take a month in between, but you have to do 2, or you're not doing this book justice.
That's true. Unless you're someone who just can grasp things very
Yeah,
quickly.
I guess if you have 200 IQ and you're like, these guys are dumb, and I am way smarter and I understood it the first time every time, then good for you, man. You're great,
Yeah.
and keep listening to our podcast.
Yes, by all means, and tell us about it. Even if
Yeah.
you want to be snarky and send us
Yeah.
hate mail, that's
Yeah,
okay.
you can be passive aggressive. I don't give a shit. It's fine. All right. Well,
All
unless
right.
you got anything else to add, Ryan, I think we're done here.
That's it. We'll catch you guys in the next one.
Bye.